Hi, I'm Andy Acton.
And I'm Chris Strevens.
This is Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. So we're back, 7 o'clock, Monday morning, new episode time.
I feel like I should yawn almost.
I don't want to kind of bring the mood down before we get going, but we've talked to a lot of people recently about how isolating dentistry is and how lonely it can be for lots of people. And I think for many, lots of dentists will work minimum 3 clinical days a week. And during that time, they're locked away in their surgery. So they're seeing a rota of patients coming in and out, but I guess they're relatively short and could be quite repetitive conversations, and they're with their nurse. Some may have a window, some may not.
True.
But just in terms of that environment, day after day, it's not great. And I wonder whether there's an element of dentistry that just needs more attention, which is around community. And I think people kind of, they talk and they might chat to a few select people, but I don't know whether dentistry needs a little bit of help in terms of how important their community can be for them, because it is quite an isolating profession. We've done webinars on it where we've talked about the mental health crisis. It's well known how it
high suicide rate. Is it second? It used to be the second highest suicide rate, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the GDC released some data fairly recently in the last few years, and the numbers are kind of high single digits of the number of dentists that, particularly when they're under investigation from the GDC, take their life or suffer a serious mental health issue. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and I just think that our community always matters, but I think it can be particularly important and valuable when people are having problems, because I think talking to other people, it's that thing, isn't it? It's that, a problem shared is a problem halved type approach.
Yeah.
But it's massive, isn't it? If you've got a group of people, particularly where there's kind of, understand where you're at, what's going on, what your world looks like, and they can really empathise with you. I think it's such an important part of life, but I just don't know whether it's as present in dentistry as perhaps it needs to be.
I wonder whether it's because of because I'm sure we still see the old stiff upper lip and all that sort of stuff that you don't let on that things aren't going so well. And I think that the interesting thing is, I always think to myself, in the UK, we don't really talk about our feelings, even though that is definitely changing. But we don't really talk about our success, because if you talk about your success, you're almost seen as being a bragging, arrogant knob. And you don't want to talk about your failure, or not so much failure, but your down feeling, because then you're seen as a depressive, a person who's unable to do your work and function properly, and a lesser being. Now, I do think that bit is changing.
Yeah,
but it's quite interesting, isn't it? When you actually think about it, the answer is you sort of can't win.
But the problem is
either way.
Using that example, you basically just make small talk.
Yeah.
You never talk about the big stuff. But I think genuinely, if you've got a community of people you can talk to, let's park the if you're having a bad day situation. But even from a success point of view, if you felt comfortable being able to share your success in a group, from a growth point of view, one, it makes you feel good that you're having a success. But imagine if you did that within a group where other people could also learn from that, and they could grow and they could improve. The likelihood of that having an impact on you and your business is so slight. There's no downside to you sharing that at all.
No.
And if other people benefit from that, why wouldn't you? And I don't know quite why. Perhaps there is a cultural thing, whereas if we have a good idea, we kind of don't want to share that good idea.
Yeah.
But if there's no impact on you, why would you not want other people? It's like sort of, there's that story that I love where somebody was talking about success, and they said, well, imagine if you were the only star in the sky. How dark would the sky be? They said we need billions of stars, and that's what makes the sky look so beautiful. And it's that thing that all those other stars don't dilute or
compete.
Take away from any of the others. It's just they're all up there together, just doing their thing. And if we had that environment and that space where you could share good stuff, and I think if you did that, and then you were having a bad day or something went wrong, I wonder whether that would also then flow out of that, where somebody said, I tell you what, I had a really bad week. I've lost a team member, or we did a campaign and it didn't produce any results. And it's just really disappointing. I'm like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's try and pick it apart.
I suppose that's the community, isn't it, of trust, in the fact of, but you only trust people you trust once you've built a relationship within a community. It's a real tricky one, isn't it? Because how are you going to build trust if people aren't actually open and honest?
Yeah.
So it's almost like you go first.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go first. I'll show you mine.
Yeah.
And you show me yours. It's a real interest, because I think the strength of power in community is not only in you can support each other through bad, but also celebrate through good. Because I do think it's an interesting one, that if you're like a loner, but that makes you sound like some sort of serial killer. But do you know what I mean? If you're a person who's in your practice, we know, as every other dentist knows, how flipping hard that is.
And also, I think if you do share success, and it doesn't have to be your success, it can be other things you've seen that have gone well. And we try to do it. We are big on trying to share the successes that we see.
Yeah.
And I think if you do that, I think it opens a door for others to share the success that they've got. But I also think if you do that, it puts you into a community and an environment where you're no longer standing still. Because if you're sharing your success, it might only be like micros, but you are moving forward. And as we know, you can't afford to stand still. You have to keep moving forward.
Get run over.
Yeah. So I think by sharing your own successes, one, I think as long as it's done well and it's not braggy, I think that's a good thing to do. And I don't think there's anything, we shouldn't be ashamed at all about saying, look, I did a campaign, or I had my best 5K time at the weekend, or whatever the success you've had is. There shouldn't be any shame in sharing that. And if it comes from a good place, it should motivate other people. But I think that it actually moves the whole profession and the whole community forward.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? The fact of, as you say, people say, "Well, I did this and it worked out really well." People go,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you're bragging again. Whereas actually we should be celebrating. I mean, it is quite interesting actually when you think about it. There's no doubt about it. Since COVID, there's way more acceptance of mental health and not doing so well, and looking at yourself. What was that phrase that we had? Mental health first aider? Yeah. There's definitely a much more accepted growing ability to talk about things that have happened to you, and in almost a negative point of view. But I haven't really seen that reversed into a let's talk positively group. It's quite an interesting one, really, because I do wonder whether it is culturally, because I think sometimes we've always said over the years that the competitor to you as a dentist is not another dentist. Yeah. It's a car, a holiday, a sofa, a TV.
Where's the money going to go?
It's not Dave or Jitin or Sunil down the road. It's actually something outside of that. So therefore, you should be able to share.
You should be able to. I mean, we've spoken to Dr. Margaret Kwaja a couple of times on this podcast, and she's a positive psychologist, and her view is very much around, what's the upside, what's the positive that comes out of this. And I think it's very easy to get sucked into what are the negative things. But I think for you to be positive and for you to be comfortable sharing both successes and failures, I think you need to be in an environment where you trust the other people in that network. And I think it's really hard to have those conversations if you don't trust them and they don't trust you.
No.
So I think you do need to be slightly careful about, so whilst we talk about community, I think you need to kind of have some pre-qualifiers, like who's in your community. Are they,
who am I sharing this with?
Are they the right sort of people? Are you going to take value out of that group? And are you prepared to put value into that group? as opposed to just talking broadly and widely to anybody and everybody about what's going on.
Taking the positives out of it, I think, is great. It's an interesting one, isn't it? You know, we see and we hear, because we're not clinicians, but there's a growing number of dentists who don't want to work in the NHS.
Yep.
Because it's like, well, they just don't want to do it, really. I don't quite know why they don't want to do it, but maybe that's a podcast for another day. But actually, the positive out of that is it teaches you a lot. You know, when we were talking to Raj Ratan, you know, there's a lot of positive by doing that 10,000 hours, you know, learning and learning and learning. Because one thing it does give you is variety and activity. But yeah, it's an interesting one, really. Because that's a positive out of what is perceived as a negative.
Oh, yeah. But also for me, if you have this community that you feel comfortable with, you've no idea what that could spark by way of collaborations, partnerships, you know, opportunities together. You know, okay, being a lone wolf and doing everything on your own has certain attractions because it means you can move a dance site quicker than if you've got other people to consider. However, going back to the beginning, we know that dentistry is a lonely profession. We know it can be quite hard for people. So having a community that you can work with. I mean, I saw something online this morning, two dentists that I know. I didn't know these dentists knew one another, and they're going on holiday together. So you think, okay, I don't know what that deeper connection is, but out of that, you know, I don't know how that friendship started, whether they qualified together or what. But you think actually, if you are somebody who doesn't necessarily have a huge network because you might not have much family in the UK, creating that community can offer you so much more. But it, you know, again, you need to be careful.
You need to be able to trust someone.
Yes, yeah.
And I think also it's wider, isn't it? Than you know, there's your community of your fellow dentists.
Yep.
There's your community of your family. Your family, it's quite interesting, really. Your family can be either very honest with you or not very honest with you, you know, so that's an interesting one. But, you know, your dental community, but then it's wider than that, isn't it? You know, you've got your accountant.
Yep.
You know, your banker. You know, how many people are banking with a bank that doesn't really understand dentistry?
Yeah.
Now, probably on a day-to-day basis, it's probably not that relevant, but... if you're looking to buy a practice, it's super relevant. The accountant, I mean, it always amazes me when we do seminars and we ask people, you know, who does your accounts? And most people nowadays, the accountant does it. It's great. And then you ask, well, do they do other dentists' accounts? And the answer is no. So you're sort of almost in the wrong community. Because you should be building a community of people who understand your profession, because then you can learn and not just learn the positives, but learn the things that you shouldn't do.
Oh, yeah.
You know, whether it be, you know, there's a whole range of people, isn't there, that form part of your community. It's not just dentists. It's everyone else outside of that as much.
Yeah, and arguably, if you're, you know, within that world all the time, having a community that is kind of related to dentistry, but not necessarily all in dentistry, might be quite interesting as well. But even within dentistry, there's lots of, you know, associations you can belong to, from general associations to specialist groups. Yeah. There's no shortage of dental events to be going through the year. There's lots of we were talking before, weren't we, about different online platforms? Yeah, and there's lots of groups, particularly on Facebook. There's loads of dental groups that you can be part of. You can go to study clubs. You'll meet people there. You know, we've got our own initiative at Frank Taylor Associates starting next year, which is the Principals Club, which is going to be a community for practice owners to come together to share ideas, talk to one another, and just generally improve their understanding of business and kind of grow and have more success.
And I think that's interesting. That whole success thing always makes me laugh, really, because everyone relates success to more cash. And we always say to people, well, success is definitions, isn't it? You know, is it more time off? Is it more time with a golf? Is it more time with your family? Is it more holidays? Is it more money? Is it less money? You know, we've seen some people who've taken the view of not earning as much but having more time with their family, and that to them is more successful, which almost feels a little bit counter counterintuitive, isn't it? Because what do you mean? What, you going to earn less money?
Yeah.
It is mad. But in a way, going back to that community thing, if you've got that, then you'll have this different shades of people, which maybe make you feel not as bad.
Well, yeah, you should do. And I guess depending on what group you're in, your age, your life stage, you may take out of that community in the early years. And then as you get older, more experienced, you might be giving back way more. But that's the way communities work. That's the way groups work. You know, that's the way kind of the elders of society work.
That's how a village works, isn't it? You know, in the good old days, you know, everyone looks after
that's just as it is. But having an environment where you feel comfortable to do that is really important. But I just think that as a profession, it's very easy to shut the surgery door, pick up a handpiece and spend your time doing teeth.
Yeah.
But actually, long term, the burn of doing that day after day isn't necessarily great for you. So trying to find your community is really important. And whether that's in dentistry, out of dentistry, whether you're an associate, whether you're a practice owner, whether you want to work with us, whatever it might be, I think it's good to understand the power of that community and having access to that network.
Yeah, because I think it goes back to what you said right in the beginning. Was it a problem shared is a problem halved? But it doesn't have to be a problem.
No. Yeah, and it's probably a success shared is a success doubled.
Yeah,
there's some
the positive on it.
There's the upside.
And I suppose that makes sense, doesn't it? If I'm doing it right, and then I pass it on to someone else who isn't my competitor, then the answer is they will be successful.
Well, on that upbeat tone, we should finish.
Hooah!
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.